Dear ladies and gentlemen, allow me to begin by thanking the organizers, the Portuguese European Union Presidency and CECOLAB, for including me in this event. I think it's a great opportunity and I only wish I could be there with you in real time. My name is Gorazd, Renčelj, I'm ambassador of Slovenia in Brazil. So what can a Slovenian ambassador posted in Latin America contribute to this very important discussion on bi-regional, inter-regional collaboration towards a more circular future? Firstly, Slovenia punches well above its weight when it comes to circular economy. For a simple reason that we put circular economy at the very center of our strategic development priorities. And we positioned it as one of the core pillars of our strategic planning toward carbon neutral, more prosperous and smarter future. You will find circular economy in pretty much every single strategic document adopted by Slovenia recently. A set of documents that set out the vision of Slovenia and its development towards 2030 and even longer, 2050. In terms of global blueprints such as Paris Agreement or Agenda 2030, again, Slovenia has positioned circular economy as a centerpiece of our response to Paris Agreement when it comes to climate policy actions, as well as towards Agenda 2030 and its sustainable development goals. Nationally, our roadmap towards a circular economy has been adopted in 2018 at the end of a process that was distinctively inclusive and multi-stakeholder. What came out of this process is a living document, not one that is set in stone, but rather one that has upgrading and improvement, if you like, in its very own DNA. Since then, Slovenia has also made another pioneering step. In November 2019, Slovenian Parliament adopted a deep demonstration project together with European Institute of Innovation and Technology. This is a project based on an approach that is very much cross-disciplinary, cross-sectoral, and has at its main objective to design and implement policies that drive smart and circular transition of local communities, but in a coordinated, national kind of way. Having listed all these steps towards circular future for Slovenia, it also is fair to say that our own circular path has its own delays, even setbacks if you like. For example, we are still waiting for Slovenian Center for Smart and Circular Transition to be established, which is meant to be as a kind of a hub or the driving vehicle for this deep demonstration project and the whole transition towards a circular economy. Equally important, I think, is to say that this time of when we wait for this institutional architecture to arise and to be established and to start working and producing, this time has not been wasted. On the contrary, I think it's been very smartly used to build and erect a different kind of architecture of knowledge, of exchange of experience with our partners. You will find Slovenian experts from government, private sector, civil society, and some of them are here with us, such as Mrs. Ladeja Godina-Košir and Mr. Janez Potočnik, who are very much engaged in the international discussions about circular economy, primarily surely within the European context, but not only, also globally, including Latin America. They are much better positioned to talk about their own work and their experience in working on projects such as national roadmaps in countries such as Chile. However, I am certain that their work of these Slovenian experts and other experts, and actually work of everybody that's, for example, included in this event, can benefit everybody. Intentionally and sometimes perhaps even not knowingly, we're building this architecture, which then I think is very important, that can drive, but also be supported by the symbiosis between the regions when it comes to, again, sharing the knowledge, experiences, and ideas. If you think about knowledge, any knowledge really, but in particular the knowledge about circular transition, which is the topic of today's discussion, as a resource, we're today talking about managing resources. So if you think about knowledge as a resource, I think there's also two ways to approach it. Traditionally, linearly, where sometimes knowledge, if not managed properly, is not used efficiently, and in the end of the day is disposed of, is wasted. On the other hand, I think knowledge, as much as any other resource, has very strong circular properties. So if it's shared and managed properly, I think it can last longer in terms of durability. It can be recycled, really. It can be reused or reapplied in different settings, in different conditions, for example, in Europe, Latin America, other parts of the world. And at the end of the day, it's very circular. It's a very circular concept, I think, knowledge. This is particularly the case in circular economy, where no one country has yet figured it out completely. Sure, there are countries which are well advanced along this way, and there are some that are lagging behind or a bit slower. But ultimately, we can still all and should actually learn from each other and with each other together. I, for one, for example, have benefited greatly from having contacts with experts in this field. And some of them are here today too. Ms. Isabella Teixeira, the former Minister of Environment, Mrs. Beatriz Luz, true leaders in this country, where I think the motive and the need for a genuine discussion on circular economy is huge, and where the potential to having that can arise from this discussion is probably one of the biggest in the world. Brazil, I strongly believe, merits all the attention when it comes to circular economy. It's incredibly rich in resources, natural and otherwise. This gives it a sense of confidence, but also brings some sensitivities. We all know the sensitivities around the discussion on resources in Amazon rainforest, particularly forests and wood, and how words such as sovereignty, for example, are used when these things are discussed, internally in Brazil, but also internationally. I think it would be great if international partners and friends of Brazil could engage this discussion in another way, not to talk about Amazon rainforest and its richness of resources as a global heritage. Because then it becomes a discussion about who owns, controls, monitors, uses, if you want, these resources. I think the right discussion, then probably the more constructive one, would be about how they are managed and how they can be managed in a circular way that would benefit everybody. I think this would change completely this discussion, and it would open up this new space for symbiosis of bi-regional or interregional, however you want to call it. Dear ladies and gentlemen, you would know that this global outreach is a very important dimension of the European Union Action Plan on Circular Economy, which gives me a perfect segue to congratulate and to thank Portuguese presidency for hosting this event and for driving this very important discussion. It also gives me an opportunity to say that we're next. Comes 1st of July and we'll take over the EU presidency for our Portuguese friends. And I can also say that we'll try to drive this discussion further and contribute so it's very much alive and kicking. In the second half of the year, we are planning with some partners here in Brazil to host a similar event focused very much on the governance. I think the issue of governance, how one approaches the governance of the process, especially because it's so system-wide and comprehensive, and it involves so many stakeholders. So how do you govern the transition towards circular economy? This will be the topic of the event that we're planning to host in the second half of the year, probably around September. We'll keep you in the loop. Not only that, we'll invite you once the date is closer, and it would be a privilege and an honor to have you participating. Thank you very much.
Okay, Anna, would you unmute as well? So, welcome everyone to this roundtable on regional symbiosis. So the notion of symbiosis really applied in an economic sense dates back to the discovery of a very interesting industrial district outside of Copenhagen called Kalundborg, where there are a group of facilities that are actually physically linked and trade byproducts and share resources. That led to the term industrial symbiosis. So I think that's kind of the origin of the discussions around regional symbiosis. there's a debate among people who are involved in this topic as to whether the transactions between entities, the different facilities, transactions like exchanges of byproducts need to occur between nearby facilities to warrant this label of symbiosis. Some say that geographic proximity is a defining characteristic of symbiosis. Others, however, expand the definition of symbiosis to include exchanges over long distances. Do you have some thoughts, let's say, Teresa, on what constitutes symbiosis?
Hello, thank you very much. First of all, just as a disclaimer, I'm not a circular economy expert whatsoever, but I don't think that's a problem actually, because if we want to engage in this transition to a circular economy, we have to go well beyond specialists and experts, and we need to have all of us engaged. So I work in a so-called regional authority. I think it's important to say and to state that in Portugal, in mainland, we do not have autonomous regions. So actually we are central administration in the region, but actually we are considered mainly at the European level, we are considered the regional authority. And actually, in terms of circular economy, I think it really pretty much requests a multi-level approach, a global one, and SDGs play a very important role as a common framework for us all. At macro-regional level, for instance, for Europe, it's important to have the Green Deal as a driver. At national level, with the national strategies or action plans whatsoever, but regional and also local. But one thing is pretty clear for me: regional scale is a central level in this transition, because it is the adequate level for place-based approaches and policies. It is an adequate territorial level for the integration of sectoral policies on the one hand, and it is a level which allows proximity to stakeholders that need to engage and to be engaged. So in Central, we have developed, in Central region, we have developed a regional agenda within the National Action Plan, which was foreseen from the beginning. David Fitzsimmons has, in the previous roundtable, mentioned that he was quite impressed with the Portuguese action plan for the transition to circular economy. And I guess that mainly it relates to two features. One, he mentioned it, so it was the engagement of all departments, governmental departments, and not only the environmental one. And the other thing, I think, it is to have a role for regions from the beginning there. So we were invited to develop regional agendas. And from the beginning, we co-designed the strategy of regional priorities with stakeholders. We developed a regional metabolism analysis. We were invited to identify priority sectors. Of course, the national ones are important, but maybe in our territory, there are specific sectors that calls for attention, and also industrial symbiosis. So coming to this specific point, when we're talking about exchange of byproducts, for sure, the cost of transport has to be weighted against benefits from the use of from their use. And costs in terms of carbon footprint, but also in terms of time and efficiency, material efficiency, as you've already mentioned. So proximity matters. And the most known example, starting from the one that you mentioned, by the way, we were planning to visit it when COVID-19 made us abort
it's kind of a pilgrimage.
Exactly. I think so. Actually, we thought of going there and also to the Netherlands, because we have a connection. Maybe I'll refer to the Netherlands. And they have also quite interesting examples. But yes, it's an inspiring example. And yes, to have the symbiosis within the same parks, or the so-called eco parks, or whatever you call them, it's important. But on the other hand, And thinking about interregional symbiosis, administrative borders are a bit meaningless sometimes. So if we think about, for instance, cross-border territories, for instance, interregional symbiosis may be a quite efficient solution, because for that territory that includes a part from one country and a part from the other, so it's interregional, but it's an interesting territory where something can happen. And on the other hand, when talking about these interregional symbiosis, I think that we can think beyond byproducts, beyond materials exchange, and we can think about knowledge exchange and technologies, the technology solutions exchange, and that is a lot more independent of the closeness and is crucial in the structuring of the global value chains, of course.
So let's, Anna, would you like to weigh in on this question?
Sure. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Portuguese government and the CECOLAB for this opportunity to share this roundtable with you and to share also our experience at the Brazilian Circular Economy Hub for these last 2 years. And we are an ecosystem of circular solutions for global and small companies. And as Brazil is such a huge country, we'd rather think to expand that. We'd rather think of an expanded definition of industrial symbiosis to include exchange over long distance, mainly if we talk, as I said, of a huge country as Brazil. We've already learned that in circular economy, one size doesn't fit all. And we have to get to the solutions that best fit the demand at that particular circumstance that might change over time. For us, it's more important to get partners along the value chain to really collaborate in a new circular mindset.
Okay, thanks. Do you have either of you have any sense of the relative importance in what you've experienced or studied of the long distance versus the more nearby symbiosis?
Sorry, I did not.
So I was just asking. So if we look at the more local symbiosis or geographically nearby symbiosis and the long distance, do you have any sense of which you would say is more important?
Like I said, I'm not an expert, but from our experience, closeness is important actually when you're talking about byproducts. So either the two companies are close, or you need to develop the taker, the user company. You have to place it close enough. Otherwise, the cost of transport and in the different dimensions may overcome the benefits. So actually, something that I've learned is that that's why I'm always saying I'm not an expert, and probably no one is, because each one is an expert from a certain perspective. And the whole point in circular economy is the systemic approach, is the balance between all the different perspectives. And that's something really difficult to come to. And it calls for the transdisciplinary approach, which is not natural, I would say, in the way we are organized, even in academia. We're always talking about the silos, and to go deep in a discipline, you need to focus, but there's a moment, and you need to focus to become more knowledgeable on that discipline. But then at a certain point, you need to bring things together, and you need to bring the different experts together in common forums, and that balance between what you gain and what you lose from the different perspectives. Maybe you gain in terms of energy, but then the intensive water use. Just making up, of course, is so much higher than that. Maybe it's not interesting to go for that solution. So actually, it really requires a transdisciplinary approach, a systemic one.
Okay, thanks. Anna?
We've had both cases, and of course, we do prioritize the nearby solutions, but they are not always possible. And sometimes even these closer facilities do not have the cheapest price. And the cheapest price is not always the solution as well. So as I've just said, one size doesn't fit all. And we do look case by case, opportunity by opportunity, and sometimes even farther facilities or plants bring up better solutions and even cheaper ones.
Okay, thanks. So another topic that we plan to talk about was the importance of international knowledge exchange for the development of the circular economy. Now, my focus as a researcher has been for years on extended producer responsibility. And I started, like many people, looking at this in the context of developed countries, especially the EU and Japan. And then as this policy approach spread more broadly to developing countries, and I was very struck by some pushback that some insights that I got from my colleagues in developing countries, that the experiences internationally don't always fit really well. That one cannot simply take a model from, say, a country in Europe and then just mimic it and put it into a developing country. So I'm trying to, make this a little lively here and talk about what your experiences or your thoughts are and how useful the international knowledge exchange has been for you. Anna, why don't you start this time?
Sure. That's our core business. That's why we're called Exchange for Change Brazil. We create, adapt, and customize circular solutions to value chains. These last 2 years, our experience in Brazilian Circular Hub has led us to 3 key learnings. First, technology is only a part. We need cultural change. We need new policies. We need supply chain integration, market demand, and systemic view. Second, unusual connections, science and education, industry, agribusiness and construction, circular bioeconomy. And here is very important, the role of the facilitator, an orchestrator, an independent institution that bring all these stakeholders together to bring up, to co-create these unusual connections and these new solutions. And third, new rules, new values, a new governance, and a new leadership. Our founder always asks, are you doing circular economy? And if someone answers yes, and she asks, with whom? Because circular economy is not possible to be done alone. And trust, collaboration, and partnerships are difficult to rise and maintain. So collaboration is key. And we will need a new economic balance. All the externalities will have to come in the prices. So I think for us, or for me particularly, the biggest challenge is to the transition between the competitive ecosystem or the space or the environment to a real collaborative one. collaboration is easy to say, but hard to implement.
Okay, thank you. Teresa?
Yeah, I know the proposed topic was knowledge exchange, but I think it's important to acknowledge that exchange has to have two ways. It cannot be transfer as such of knowledge from one place, usually the more developed, as you were mentioning in your presentation, to another, normally the less developed. Maybe we should call better, and it has now become popular, co-creation and co-development. So the collaboration, the collaborative dimension that Anna was underlying, and I pretty much agree, actually circular economy is about collaboration. So we're used in economy to have competition. Competition is the essence of economy. I would say is the essence of linear economy. For circular economy, the essence has really to move to collaboration, because we cannot do things by ourselves. So here, in terms of knowledge transfer, I would say that it's important to engage with others in co-creation, co-development projects. Coming back to the place-based approach, I'm pretty much convinced that solutions have to be place-based. So they need to take into account the characteristics, the assets, the concrete ecosystems of the different territories. So learning, benchmarking, whatever is always fruitful, but then we need to to adapt the solutions to the concrete environment, and that is crucial for the success. And if not done, it's pretty much a path to the unsuccess, if you want just to bring about. And this is not only in terms of circular economy. It goes for almost everything. For instance, for innovation, when we wanted to all build Silicon Valleys everywhere, we were not pretty much successful, as we all know. So actually, we do need to take into account the local environments. And in Centro, we developed the circular economy agenda within the smart specialization strategy. I don't know if you are familiar with the concept. It's something that in Europe has become mandatory for regions and countries to have smart specialization strategies in the context of the cohesion policy, exactly to identify. That was the idea was to concentrate resources on the priorities that particular territory was more capable of developing, and we used the smart specialization strategy, the so-called S3, for that. And it's interesting because in Europe nowadays the revision of the S3 has become the S4, which is smart specialization strategy for sustainability. Because this has been recognized as an important way out for the Green Deal, to deploy the Green Deal. So to use, because of the importance of knowledge and innovation, and smart specialization strategies are about always the knowledge and innovation. To put all the regional innovation ecosystems aligned with the smart and sustainable solutions. So that's our framework. And one key feature of smart specialization strategies is the outward looking, because we always try to find regions with similar priorities to look for cooperation that can provide us with scale and critical mass. That's really important, mainly for a small region like us, in a small country like Portugal, or look for regions that can be complementary and that have whatever it takes to unlock our innovation potential that has not been yet developed, because we lack something, and we can, in that cooperation, we can benefit from that. So from the beginning, we have been engaging in international networks, and for instance, in terms of circular economy, I think it was actually our first approach to this topic was within the in Horizon 2020 project, a CSA, so a coordinated and support action. So we were talking about design policy, and it was focused on circular economy, and it brought different regions that had circular economy transition as one of the smart specialization strategies priorities, and they were working together. And actually, we are now continuing that cooperation within another European project. So, to sum up, cooperation is really important, but one has to be able to translate, customize, call it whatever you want, into our concrete ecosystem. Otherwise, it will not be successful.
There's something you want to add here, Anna?
Yeah, it won't work if it's not adapted to your real concrete case. It won't work.
So, in the high-tech industry, the software industry, there's always talk about, can a solution scale? Can it scale up? And I think your comments about the need for place-based understanding and adaptation is right on the mark. How do we think about that at the same time of thinking about the scaling up of these kinds of solutions?
I think the key is to align. I mean, that's why I began to mention about the strategic frameworks that we need all to refer to. And I see SGDs play an important role. So the global scale strategies play an important role there. And then at macro regional level, for us, our macro region is Europe. So at European level is also important, because the key issue is that you need to be aligned. We don't all perform the same role, but we can play a role in a bigger play. And I think that's the key issue. I mean, we all know we have a global economy with global value chains, so we all have to fit in there. And if we want the global value chains to perform this transition to a circular approach, each one of us that joins those value chains have a role to play. I think it's alignments, it's coordination, it's cooperation, more than blind transfer. I'm calling it blind transfer. Maybe it's a bit an excess, but blind transfer of a solution that, if we don't have the right culture, the right institutions, the right ecosystem, the right habits, the right stakeholders, the right resources, it won't
okay, thanks.
Be useful.
Well, if we don't scale up, it's not a solution, a global solution. It's a project. So we have to keep in mind that international commerce will not end tomorrow or whenever COVID ends. So we do need to scale up. In terms of scaling up is key. But as Teresa said, in a new way, we have insistently repeated that circular economy is not only material flow, product design, recycling. We got to talk about collaboration, value creation, shared responsibilities, experience and performance, and new commercial relationships. No doubt, we will need, as previously mentioned, to think of new rules, a level playing field, a new economic balance where externalities are incorporated in the prices, a new understanding on how to better use the resources within a new governance in a safe operating space, as it put in the recent European Action Plan, as a way to achieve all the SDGs in a more sustainable and inclusive world.
Thank you. All right, we're going to switch gears here a little bit and talk about resources. So, the importance of managing and planning the reserve of resources in the short, medium, and long term at the international level is an important question. And then what is the role of regional symbiosis in this? Well, let me add a little more to this. So in my field, there is some differentiation that's made about the availability of resources, particularly in a physical sense, that, you know, we're not running out of iron, we're not running out of aluminum. We definitely have problems with rare earth minerals, and there's a lot of debate about things like phosphorus. So the it's not a universal condition across all resources to face issues of availability or scarcity. So I'm interested if you have thoughts on how much questions of resource availability align with the actual activities of the symbiosis that you're familiar with. So are the things that are being traded or exchanged or shared the things that are actually have a problem about resource availability, or they tend to be driven by other factors? I know that's a mouthful, sorry.
Yes, that's an easy one, huh? Well, Teresa, I'll help you. I'll start. Well, as a country with such a huge biodiversity, we have been discussing here in Brazil this a lot. It's been a very hot discussion. And yeah, very hot discussion everywhere we go. But what we need to balance is a way of growing and diminishing. And what I would like to say is to facing inequality as the same at the same time that we can economically grow and preserve our resources or our natural resources. So we do have a nice modern legislation, but to be very sincere, our problem is on the implementation. So it's not easy to implement any rules in Brazil, especially environmental ones, but we are on our way. And what I think circular economy is a tool for sustainable development. So we can, I'm very optimistic because I think now we do have technology and there are lots of technology to come, but we do have technology to help us on preserving our biodiversity, as well as we can explore them in a more sustainable way, in a way that will help people to thrive.
Thank you. Teresa?
Yeah, see if I can add something, some value to the discussion. Well, to be honest, at company level, I think probably it is not the main factor, to be honest, Reid. At least in Central Region, it's the context I know the better. Our tissue is 99% of small, medium-sized companies. So for those type of companies, actually the long-term, the long-run strategy is not their daily concern. And so the availability or scarcity of resources probably is not really the main factor. But there's where I think that public policy plays an important role. So both considering the overall view, so bringing a collective perspective, of course, and then creating regulatory framework and making sure it's well implemented, because it's quite easy to create nice regulatory frameworks, but the issue and the key issue is then to implement them. Coordinating territorial development strategies and designing instruments that then may gear private decisions in the right way, so to say. So I think it's important not to ignore that there will be losers in this transition. If we need to move from we need to move in terms of, for instance, energy into renewable energies. So the fossil fuel companies will be losers at a certain point. The public policy has to address that. That's why we talk about just transition, and it's important to have that in mind. And then public policy may do something else, which is to act within, for instance, education programs, to raise awareness and engage citizens as a whole, society as a whole. Because ultimately, this general movement will help bringing this issue of scarcity of resources or availability of the resources to the core of the decision making at all levels, companies included. Meaning that, there are the critical raw materials, and those are the main concern. But even the exploitation of natural resources that are not with the problem of scarcity, they leave environmental problems. I was reading the front page of a local newspaper today, and I read, and I was pleased that a local municipality, so a local government from a small town here in Central Region, rejected the exploitation of a natural resource because of all the consequences, the effects, the side effects that exploitation would bring in terms of tourism, in terms of the traffic, the intensity of traffic. So actually, it's the scarcity of resources. It's about or the use of resources, about its scarcity, but also about preserving them and preserving the landscape, if we can say so, which is an asset in itself. And I'm not only thinking about tourism, it's an asset for us all. It's a cultural asset, the natural landscape.
So I have just gotten orders from the masters behind the controls that we are over time. So I want to thank you both for your contributions and for this discussion and for your willingness to put up with my complicated questions.
Thank you very much for them. Thank you, Anna.
I thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be with you guys, sharing our experience over here. Thank you very much again.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.